kind of this concept of rooted in love is kind of something I've come to realize over the past couple of months, just recollecting over my life. So I hope this sits well with you as it did with me. So with that being said, let's talk Lord of the Rings.
Come on, Peter, you practice this.
Quote, I wish it need not happen in my time, said Frodo. So do I, said Gandalf, and so do all who live to see such times. But it's not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. Unquote. We're all familiar with Lord of the Rings, the great adventure of Frodo Baggins who leaves his home on the road of uncertainty to destroy the ring in the fires of Mount Doom to save Middle-earth. We're all familiar with the story, that even though it may be a work of fiction, there's something in this story that's essentially true, and it's something that we will all inevitably have to go through. You see, Frodo did not know how much everything would change when the ring was placed in his hands. He lived everything that was familiar to him. His home, the comfort of luxurious life, the green, warm afternoons spent in books and pipe smoke, and the lively talk in the pub over a pint of ale. Everything. He was uprooted from his stable and lovely life for a greater purpose that required of him a true sacrifice of himself, and all done simply for love. Love of his friends, love of the Shire, and love of all the unknown people whom he would never meet. You see, we as people strongly desire stability, but whether or not we like it, we're like Frodo in our own way. Life, it's unstable, it's full of change and uprooting. And in order to get through the pain and suffering, we want stability, and we want roots that give us stability. But where do we put them? In a certain place? In a town? Maybe. But even if life never requires us to leave that home we know so well, that place is just going to change around us. However, we don't just want roots, and we don't just want stability. We need roots, and we need stability. But they must be placed in something that change cannot touch, that it cannot alter. And this is why I'm here to talk to you about why we need to be rooted in love. If you think about it, The Lord of the Rings is first and foremost a love story. Now you're probably wondering, what? A love story? And you're right, it's not a chick flick. But I tell you, it's a love story all the same. If you've ever read C.S. Lewis's Four Loves, I'm looking at you, Lindsay, then you'll know that there are 4 different types of loves. And the third one, which is like the romantic type of love that we talk about, or we think of when we hear the phrase love story or romantic films, is called eros, and it's the attractive love. It's the love that you see in the good of another person that you're attracted to. But there's this 4th type of love that C.S. Lewis talks about. The Greek word is agape, or charity. And it's this love that encompasses all 4, and it's this true self-sacrificial love that a soldier has when he dies for his country or for his family. And it's this type of love that forced each step of Frodo along his way, even to the point when he was collapsed on the slopes of Mount Doom. And it was this type of love that provoked the words of Samwise Gamgee, I can't carry it for you, but I can carry you. Now, in order to understand this idea of change a little bit more, I'd like to go back and look at us as people. Because I think we as Americans are, in a sense, a country of unrooted people. Whether or not you've lived in Placer County your whole life, or you've had to go through a great change in moving from your unknown home to an unfamiliar place, your ancestry knows change. Your family knows change. You may have grown up listening to stories of your grandparents or great-grandparents immigrating from the United States, or immigrating from their native country to the United States, or about the turmoil your ancestors experienced while pioneering across the Oregon Trail when transportation was anything but comfortable, and when dying from a disease was a very possible reality. My family is no exception. These beautiful people, who I've never met, are my great-great-grandparents. And my grandfather always brings up their story about, on the dinner table, about how they left their home from Clay County, Illinois in the 1800s when they were only 19. That's my age. And he found out that as they journeyed westward, they stopped in different places along the way, and each time they stopped, they had a child. And they stopped a lot. They ended their journey in Washington State with a total of 13 kids. However, they lost about 6 of them along the way. Their life was full of uprootedness, instability, pain, and suffering. However, it's truly hard to understand the difficulty of what our ancestors experienced as they went through a great change, a sense of belonging to nowhere, if we ourselves have not experienced it. Which is why I want to make this speech a little more personal and talk to you about my story of change and what it was like for me when I left my home. So in case you didn't know, that's my life. I'm currently 19 years old, and I've lived in 8 different different countries, so I know change. And no, my family's not military. They're teachers. And very mobile ones too. I mean, if you thought your car could get you places, you really have no idea. If they were an automobile, they'd be the best-selling one. But in all seriousness, I'm not sure why I've moved so much. And part of me wishes I hadn't, because I, like all of us, desire stability. I desire a place where I'm known, a place where I'm established, and a place I can call home. And I had that. If you know me, you always know that I say I'm from this small rancher town in the middle of nowhere, Wyoming, of about 7,000 people. And that's because I moved there when I was 5 and I didn't leave till I was 16. It's the longest I've ever been in one place. I grew up in a homeschool community of where all my best friends and I lived within 5-minute walk of each other. We all went to the same church. We're all part of the same homeschool, or same college community that our parents worked at. And I saw them nearly every day. We would spend most of our time playing games, just fooling around, horseback riding, backpacking in the mountains, all sorts of stuff. And I often remember the stupid and ridiculous stuff we used to do when we were kids. So for instance, in the summertime, I had this pool in my backyard. And it wasn't like this super nice California dream pools where they're dug in and like the sunlight's glistening on and just having so much fun. It was like these blow-up pools where you take one little like tack and your entire summer experience goes out the window. So anyways, we go in the pool and then we get out of the pool and get this, we go and we lay in the street. Why? Because it was hot. And the whole point was to get super hot and then go back into the pool and cool off. Now, part of the experience was seeing the looks on like the 45-year-old moms who would slowly drive up to us, stop, see about 7 kids laying face down in the street, watch as they get up, go to the sidewalk, and then just continue driving like, what am I gonna do? Should I call 911? Another stupid thing we used to do. During the 4th of July, because in Wyoming, Lander especially, it's the best place to be for the 4th of July because all sorts of every firework under the sun is legal there. So you think that you would take them and fire them off in the air, right? Wrong. We fired them at each other. Why? Because that's exactly what you don't do. And we were people, we did the things that you don't do. Luckily no one got hurt, but it was still completely stupid. But the point was we were stupid and innocent kids. But as we got older, things got deeper. We started to have the best conversations about life on those horseback rides and about the beauty around us on those backpacking trips, and we started to rely on each other emotionally, finding stability in each other. We had the type of friendship where you could just sit for hours on end and say absolutely nothing, and it wasn't awkward. Because we were fine simply in each other's presence. We knew that we cared and loved for each other. So we had plans to go to the same college. We were gonna find someone to marry at that college and settle down and do the exact same thing we always did for the rest of our lives, except for laying down in the street, shooting fireworks at each other. That's besides the point. But I found out real quickly that life doesn't work that way. My mom's health started to decline because of the altitude and the dryness of the climate, which meant we had to move. And so we moved to San Luis Obispo, California on the Central Coast. And at first I wasn't too shaken up by this decision. I guess I didn't know how much I loved that place and how much it meant to me. And besides, I was gonna go back to college there in a couple of years. I was gonna go back to the summers. It would have been fine. I'm gonna meet my friends again. We're gonna do the exact same old things, and it's gonna be great. So the first year goes by in California, and it's hard. It was lonely. I didn't know anyone. I wasn't adjusted to the school life, to the crazy California beach bum life there. Right? I was the awkward homeschooler who no one knew from a different country. Different state. And so it was hard, but I always reminded myself, my roots are in Wyoming. I'm gonna go back there. That's my home, that's where my friends are. And I did. I went back in the summertime, things were absolutely amazing. It was like I had never left. So then the next year rolls around. And this time, I start to make a few more friends. I've adjusted to the life there. But I still have the same mentality. I'm gonna go back to Wyoming. So then I go back there for an extended amount of time. And I start to notice something different. This is kind of in the back of my mind. But things are still great. I had a girlfriend. Things are awesome. But then the relationship didn't work out, which is too bad. And I ended up going to Poland for about 10 months on a foreign exchange. And then it was at this point that I started to question what my home was. Because there I was, alone, I didn't know the language. I didn't know the culture. COVID was raging and I was somewhat heartbroken. And so I didn't know where I belonged. I was lost. And I realized that, wow, I've changed. My friends have changed. The place around me has changed. I've had new experiences. They've had new experiences. But we didn't have the same connection we had before. We were still friends, but it just wasn't in the same way. And so I also started to realize that I started to get these strong connections in Poland. Once I knew the language, I started to grow in my relationships with people. I started to talk with them and hang out with them, and we made these really strong relationships. And I felt at home there. And I saw how established my Polish host family was in their town, how involved they were. They were known. They were rooted in their town. I thought that because they were rooted in their town, that made them such a beautiful family. But I was wrong. It was really in their faith. It was in their love that made them such a beautiful family. They had this outpouring spirit to them that I just knew would go with them wherever life would take them. It didn't matter. They loved each other. They loved God, and they loved me, a stranger from another country, in a time when there's so much fear and so much instability. And the last thing you need is another person to care for, emotionally and physically. They didn't care. They made sure that I was okay. They never complained. They talked to me when I was down. And they had this outpouring spirit to them. And so I started to realize that it wasn't Wyoming that I was so attached to. It was the love that my friends and I shared for each other. It was the deep love for my family that I had for them and that they had for me that I was attached to so much. Home was where my family was. Wherever my family happened to live, that was home. And so I started to realize, another thing I started to realize is whenever I did acts of virtue for people, whenever I loved them, whenever I cared for them above myself, I felt rooted, I felt strong. Like no storm that life threw at me could ever shake me. But when I did things that were selfish, when I cared about myself, when I didn't think of another person, I felt like a leaf in a hurricane. So to quote C.S. Lewis, when we are such as he can love without impediment, we shall in fact be happy. And this is because we are communal creatures, and we need community. We need relationships, and we need camaraderie, but we need good community, and we need good relationships, and we need good and true camaraderie. And we're meant for union with people. But the only way to reach that is through love. And it's kind of a paradox if you think about it, because in order to reach that love, right, that fulfillment, you have to be that happiness. You have to be willing to sacrifice your immediate happiness for someone else. So it's kind of paradoxical in that sense, right? But on the other hand, when we do things that aren't love and we're selfish, we're separated from